My name is David TStevens. I am a wellness architect and co-founder at Olympian Meeting. I'm going to be on the Online Prosperity Show, and we're going to talk about why integrating wellness into your corporate meetings and events will leave your attendees energized instead of exhausted.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we've got a guest whose journey is as inspiring as it is transformative. Now, David, how are you doing today, my man?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Fantastic. Wow, you took the words right out of my mouth. Or did I take them out of your mouth? Fantastic is just something you don't hear from a lot of people these days. I mean, given how people are being and surviving. So it's really exciting to, meet you today and discover what is so fantastic about that which you do. And for those that are tuning in for the very first time, welcome to the Online Prosperity Show, the one and only show where we help you start, scale, and grow a business that's profitable and enjoyable. And today we're going to be going on a journey. Okay, the journey starts when David had dedicated 2 decades in a high intensive world of event planning and doing great works in media, entertainment, and corporate sectors. And now picture him balancing that demanding career with a passion for fitness so intense that it actually earned him the title of the fittest male event professional 6 times over. And that's the story that David TStevens, the co-founder and wellness architect of Olympian Meeting, which is the world's only wellness first events agency. This is the first time I've heard this, David, and I can't wait to explore what it is that you guys do there. But before we jump into Dave's story, I wanted to preface that David realized that there was a relentless pace in the events industry, and so much was happening that it actually overlooked the well-being of the actual participants in these events, and it led him to a pivotal moment. So witnessing his friends and peers succumb to fatigue and burnout that actually happens behind the scenes, he recognized that his personal wellness practices could actually serve as a beacon for an industry in need of change. While they're out there entertaining other people, they were actually burning out in the process, and obviously that didn't look good for him. So this epiphany didn't come without its challenges. I mean, the fear of venturing into uncharted territory was very real, until a friend of David's candid question says, "Why aren't you going all in on this?" And then it just became a catalyst for his transformation. So today, David is on a mission to revolutionize event planning by integrating wellness into every facets, ensuring that attendees, planners, and staff leave events feeling rejuvenated rather than drained. And I think his story is testament to the power of aligning passion with purpose, and that's I think one that actually promises to resonate a lot with a lot of us today. Now, David, you can see I'm mincing my words because this is the first time I've ever had anything like this cross my desk. So I'm trying really, really hard to put the words together. Tell me a little bit about your journey. First of all, when you started off in the events industry, what was it like, and what then led to you discovering this needed to be present in the world?
Yeah, I was going to say the intro was fabulous. I don't know if you chat GPT'd it, but it feels like it must be stalking me if it did, because that was dead on. No, my very first events job was for an American football league called the XFL in like the late 90s. It was owned by Vince McMahon, the guy behind WWF, WWE. He started this crazy American Football League, and I was part of the promotions team. And that was my first paid events job. And then that segued into working in radio. And I worked for a couple different radio stations in San Jose and in Sacramento, and then back to San Jose, California. And then that turned into experiential events. And I also worked in sports for the San Jose Sharks, which is a national hockey team. And I did in-game promotions, like the people that run around, throw out the t-shirts during the games. And that was super fun. But I was also working full-time at a radio station. And then I went on the road and I became an experiential marketer, which led to being in charge of MTV Spring Break, which that in itself was a whole adventure. I jokingly said if I would have had hair, I would have pulled it all out. And you understand. Only we can say that to each other. Unless,
everybody else.
And then I slowly transitioned essentially into corporate and working for meetings and events agencies. But along the way, I ended up working at a company called 24 Hour Fitness, which is a large gym chain. Think Lifetime Fitness or Gold's Fitness or whatnot. And I was an internal meeting and events professional where I ran all of the manager trainings, the incentive trips, where they take everyone to some, gorgeous island or something for the people who did really great sales numbers and whatnot. And I saw when I worked there, I was really excited to work there because I thought to myself, oh my goodness, I get to plan an event the way I would want to attend one. Because a few years earlier, I'd gone through a breakup and I finally decided to get myself together and prioritize my health. But it was mostly food and fitness. That was all, every 20-something guy wants to be jacked and have a six-pack and be irresistible to everyone, seemingly, even though they're usually not any fun to be around because they're too self-absorbed. Long story short, though, I went after my fitness goals. I ended up getting a job at 24 Hour Fitness corporate, and they just met differently because they were living their brand. So every morning it started with a workout, and the workout was very intense, but it was always supportive, and it felt like a team practice where everyone was always talking trash to each other, but it was in a friendly way to get each other to push a little further so that everybody worked a little harder. And then everybody came in and had breakfast together, and breakfast was egg whites and bacon and all the things you would expect. But what was interesting is you would think that group would eat really, really clean and specific, but you had people who were on off season of bodybuilding. You had people who were prepping for a show. You had people who were trying to put on weight, and you had people who were trying to lean out. So in our registration, we would ask people, are you bulking? Are you cutting? We would ask these questions to understand how to order food, because if you had someone who was on a cheat day, and if you know who Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is, cheat days are everything. You had to accommodate for that. So you couldn't not have desserts because the person on the cheat day would lose their mind. Because that was their day of sanity to keep them on target. So I learned some things there that I didn't realize I was necessarily learning. And then I spent a lot of time in corporate, and fast forward, I don't know, 7 or 8 years, and I was having a conversation with someone about why are conferences so insufferable? You go to a conference, you're supposed to learn all kinds of things. You're supposed to come back with new opportunities and be filled with excitement, and instead you leave sleep deprived, bloated, your inbox is a mess, and you kind of almost borderline resent even going to the conference because you're behind, you feel terrible. It makes you question, was the conference even worth it? And so a friend of mine and I said, well, our events at 24 were never like that. When people left, they were amped. They were fired up. And she said, well, why can't other people meet like that? I said, well, they can. We just got to teach them. And that was in, let's say, October of 2019. Insert ominous music here.
I was about to say, bruh.
Yeah. But it made it, like it was meant to be, because we had this idea about fit meetings. And I gotta say, like, nobody would have been into it. They would have thought, no, I'm all set. What happened? So that conversation happened in 2019. The fittest event professional thing started in 2018. So I was an avid CrossFitter for a number of years, and they do this thing globally every year called the CrossFit Open, and it's a global qualifier to go to the CrossFit Games, which is basically their Olympics. And in 2018, they introduced occupational hashtags. So people could brag about being the fittest firefighter, the fittest cop, the fittest doctor, the fittest whatever. And I put hashtag event prof, because I thought, one, this is a way of finding my community so that when I go to events, I'll know to look for other people, because I was like, oh, I'll see somebody on the leaderboard. I'll look them up on LinkedIn. We'll make friends. We'll talk about CrossFit. And then if we're at the same conference together, we can work out together and whatnot. So 2018, the CrossFit Open happens, comes and goes, and I'm the only person on the leaderboard. And there's over 250,000 people that do the CrossFit Open globally. And I was like, how can I be the only one? And that kind of hit me, and I started thinking, and I was like, there's got to be more people than that. Then 2019 came along. Sure enough, I was the only one again. And that's when I started thinking, oh, we're not taking care of ourselves. We're not making the time to take care of our health. And then, so that was 2019, and I started throwing around that I'm the two-time fittest event professional in the world. 2020, the ladies showed up and whooped my butt, so I just go to fittest male event professional. But it was, these things started to stack up. And when we started talking about, well, why do people leave those meetings before energized, and usually people don't? We went and we started finding the research and reading up on things. And we started reading books and research papers that movement and food have direct impact on your ability to learn and perform. So much so there are studies. There's a book called Spark. Based on your background, you seem to enjoy books.
Actually taking note of that.
There's a book called Spark, written by a psychologist, about this high school, grades 9 through 12 in the US, and they mandated PE for these kids. And what they did was they mandated PE, or physical education, in the mornings, and they had to work out at certain heart rate zones. So it wasn't that they had to run a mile in a certain amount of time or a 5K, but they had to work out, and they had to work out in a certain heart rate zone. And what they found is that these kids' test scores were skyrocketing. And what they figured out, this exemplifies our approach to why we do what we do and why we offer what we offer with our agency. They figured out that when you put your body under a certain amount of stress, physiologically it responds by triggering your sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight mode. And what that does is it puts all your senses on high alert, and it turns on your hippocampus, which is the learning center of your brain. Because it's in fight or flight, it's going, what's going on? Are we going to die? Are we in trouble? I need to make quick decisions. I need to remember if this is a bad situation, if this is a good situation. Your decision making is going up. And it also, once that hippocampus turns on, it starts producing this brain-derived neurotropic factor that helps assist with that. What they found is those chemicals and your hippocampus being on, that all lingers for hours. So these kids were going to PE, they were working out, they were turning their brains on so that when they went to class, they were actually out learning the other kids in the class.
That's interesting.
And when I read that, it was light bulb moment. Holy crap. We spend $1 million, a million plus to bring these people together. And then we basically do everything to sabotage their ability to learn. We keep them up late, we give them a bunch of alcohol, we feed them garbage food, et cetera, et cetera. And then we spend, you know, 5 figures on a keynote speaker that nobody remembers because they're all hung over from the night before. And so all this kind of started to come together. And then with 2020 happening the way it did, made everyone start to rethink their own health and well-being. And that term started coming around. And the thing I like to share is our company name is Olympian Meeting, which when you hear the term Olympian, it triggers a certain thought, high intensity, fierce competition, that intense training. But our nickname is OM, which I have a co-founder who I was having that discussion with. And I jokingly say I'm the Olympian side of the house and she's the OM side of the house. And in between those two extremes is where everyone lives. Because people are in different places on different days at different phases of their life. But what was special about that is in April or May, I was starting to have my own challenges with mental health because, don't get me wrong, I was in some of the best shape of my life doing my prison workouts in the side yard of the house. And but I couldn't go anywhere because I was in California and we were pretty locked down.
Yeah.
And I'm a traveler. And so being stuck, I really started to struggle. And Ariadne, my co-founder, said, "What are you doing for your mental health?" And I don't need your crystals and nonsense. I'm just going to lift heavier weights. Typical dude response, right? And then it started to happen for me. And then you saw what happened in the 2020 Olympics with Simone Biles. Mental health, like the stigma, it's not that it was gone, but it changed. You want to talk about a singular moment that changed the way people think about mental health? She's like one of the greatest gymnasts of all times, and she just walked away. And that told everyone it's okay to not be okay. And that's what helped me kind of come to terms with it. And then we really started to think about this approach to meetings and events from just a completely different perspective.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for taking us on that journey. I mean, we could just conclude the show from now, but you've raised a lot of questions, mate. Like, you know. So the thread that I'm noticing with all the work that you've been doing, David, is people. Very people centric. I mean, when you started, you know, it was promotions, then you did the MTV stuff, and everything just revolved around people. What was it like growing up for you? Are you from a big family, or what does that sort of look like in?
No, pretty much the exact opposite. I grew up out of a family of me, my mom, my dad.
So you're an only child.
I'm an only child, and I kind of lived in a bit of a weird purgatory-esque childhood in the sense that I grew up in a very strict religious household. But under the circumstances, the way my mom and dad met and the way I was, let's say, conceived, The religion didn't really want me either, but because the religion was so strict, I wasn't really allowed to hang out with kids at school because they weren't part of the religion. So I lived in a world where, one group of people, I wasn't good enough for them. And then I lived in another world where everyone else wasn't good enough for me.
I mean, this writes itself, because then you wanting to belong somewhere or be a part of a group or just be a part of some sort of happening would have then led you to follow this path of events and being around so many people, like the football, all of those things, because that's the sort of thing that I would have noticed. But what was the response now from the family, knowing the background of what they were and the sort of career choices that you made?
Yeah. Well, my dad passed when I was 22.
Oh, sorry about that.
So, fun fact, my dad was 58 and my mom was 19 when I was born. Yeah, I'll just leave that there. So he passed when I was 22. So I had only just started getting into events at that point in my life. And Unfortunately, my mom and I don't talk because I'm not active in the religion anymore, and that's part of their rules, that they don't associate with people who aren't in the religion.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, with that sort of starting point, it literally just put you, you know, in a position where you really had to find a place where you can belong. If mom was not going to be available, and obviously dad was of another generation, that in and of itself would have created that. But did you have any sort of support from other family members that would have not been involved in this, or were you out to fend for yourself?
I didn't meet the rest of my family. I met from my mom's side. I mean, most everyone on my dad's side was pretty much already passed.
Mm.
Um, on my mom's side, I met my grandma and my aunt and my two uncles in 2019. So that's still a fairly new relationship, but they're all great people and wonderfully normal.
Absolutely. And when you were sort of growing up, was this something that you recognized? Because fish don't see the water that they swim in up until,
No,
yes.
I didn't really start to question things until I think I was probably 11 or 12. And then, when you start to really try to start thinking for yourself, and I just started to question the whole, like, we sing these hymns essentially, and they talk about unconditional love, and then in the back of my head I'm like, but yet these people won't let their kids hang out with me and I can't hang out with them, so like where's the unconditional love? So it made me just start thinking differently about the strictness of the religion I was raised in, and how there was a level of hypocrisy that was became more and more obvious as time went on. That I was 16 when I told my dad that I wanted to walk away from it, and I said, look, I understand that you chose this for you and that it was your path and whatnot, and I understand, and thank you for giving me a strong moral compass, but I can't be a part of it based on what I've experienced. And he, as politely as he could, had a hard time arguing with that logic.
Mm, I can only imagine. But also, David, at 16, you taking that sort of route, uh, that's scary for a lot of kids. And you could have actually ended in the wrong sort of crowds, especially the people that you were hanging around with? I mean, I'm talking maybe drugs or whatever
Oh
it is
yeah,
come around there. And how did you stay clear of that or not?
that's why I thank my dad for a strong moral compass and work ethic and whatnot. I was smart enough to know that it could go terribly wrong, and I guess maybe growing up as an only child and fending for myself as long as I was, and in my teenage years, so stubborn that I was more into the people who accepted me for who I was than trying to conform to someone else's standard because I just escaped that essentially, right? I had
Mm,
lived my whole life in an arena where people were constantly trying to make me be something I wasn't.
right.
And so I think it gave me a strong sense of self that, I mean, I grew up in the late 90s to age myself, and in the US, ecstasy and all that and raves were all the thing. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm good. I don't like, I can hang out with you when you're sober. I don't need to go do that. I had no
Mm,
interest. It just, I think because I didn't feel a need to conform because I already dealt with an environment that made people conform and I
right.
wasn't accepted. So I knew that that all comes to an end at some point, anyways.
Absolutely. Now, were you also, I mean, when you're in a situation like that, there's a need to want to prove yourself to the ones that had sort of rejected you and things like that. Did that sort of energy sort of show up in and of its own because you just kept going and going?
No, I just wanted to do what made me happy. Um, I really had no interest in proving anything to anyone except to myself,
Mm,
which I guess that's a gift.
absolutely.
But I guess growing up alone, I knew I'd always have to answer to myself, but I could choose who else I let in or who else I let myself be accountable to. But
Mm,
you always have to answer to yourself. You never get a choice there.
I can only imagine. Now, as you were growing up, you did mention, the friend that then asked you, why aren't you going all in on this? Was it the sort of attitude that you were having in and around the things that you're doing, sort of like not going all in, or was this just because it wasn't, tested yet to have an understanding of what it would look like?
Yeah, I think that was probably just more fear than anything.
Mm,
Um, it was so that conversation happened in October of 2023, and uh, her exact words are, "What the blank are you doing?"
yeah.
And and she had grabbed me by both my shoulders and said, "What blank are you doing?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "Why aren't you going after this wellness thing?" Because we did our research. I was still a corporate planner at the time in all the way through 2023. And in 2022, we did our first thing. We basically beta tested it, right? We formulated this idea, and I had what I like to call trust equity at the company I worked at, where I could just do things and nobody questioned me. And so we tried all these things, and we watched our net promoter score skyrocket. And we got with a industry publication, and we wrote a white paper about it, which led to some speaking gigs about the outcome of incorporating wellness into this event. And then I ended up starting a podcast in 2023 because inevitably after public speaking, you get to talk to people and you end up meeting people. And we had these great conversations. I was like, we need to re record these conversations. And so it was October of 23 when my friend said that to me. And I hesitated because I said, I don't want to just be another vendor because in the events world, there's no shortage of salespeople and whatnot. And she goes, "Oh, because you're new? you've been a corporate planner for like 20 years. What are you talking about? And it was just someone saying the things I needed to tell myself that I hadn't confronted. I say your best friends in your life are the people that tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
Not what you want. Yeah.
And she just told me what I needed to hear. And it was right then, right there, that I was like, you're right. Like, I gotta just do this. So I called my co-founder. I called my wife because obviously this would impact her, as opposed to me getting another job and whatnot. So I said, "Hey, I think I'm going to go after this thing." And they both said the same thing. It's about time.
So you didn't see this off for yourself, but the thing is, rightfully so. I mean, fear can literally really, really stop us in our tracks, and the fear of the unknown can be paralyzing. But what are some of the biggest obstacles that you would have faced during this transition from what you were facing?
Yeah, I think it was, one, obviously the lack of revenue potentially,
Right.
and just being able to make the day to day and the bills. Also, does anybody even care about this idea? Is it stupid? Is anyone going to buy it? All the things that come with something that's never been done before. Because I knew how risk adverse and how resistant to change and how cynical, I love you all, my industry can be. Like we don't take a lot of chances because we're playing with 50 to 5,000 lives, so to speak. So taking chances is, if we fail, and I think one of the reasons that our job is seemingly so stressful, I am married to an ER physician who reminds me on a regular basis that my job isn't that stressful. But because perspective, right?
Mm.
When event professionals fail, you fail on a public level. Everyone at that event gets to see your failure. If you drop the ball on something, if a bus doesn't show up on time, if there's not enough food, et cetera, your success and your failure, your job performance is on display to as many people as there are attending your event.
And these days they show up with their mobile phones, so it's not just those in attendance; it's their network, you know.
Yeah. So people are hesitant to change. And I knew if we went after this wasn't just, oh, we made cupcakes into cake pops. This was, we're creating a category and rethinking the way people gather. And that's not small. That's a big ship to turn.
Well, absolutely. Also looking at the perspective in ER, usually there's an audience of one. Yes, the stakes are life and death, but if you've got an audience of 50,000, the flight or fight response you were talking about earlier would also come into play. So, there's
Yes,
but you're talking about, but you're talking about obviously reshifting the events sort of scenario. Now you've integrated wellness into events, which is a unique concept. Can you maybe walk us through maybe an example of how this integration has actually positively impacted
yeah.
an event that you're comfortable to give us an example of, so that we can have a view of what this looks like?
Yeah. So, well, I talked about earlier about the workout and the hippocampus thing, right? And so that's why at every event we always offer various intensities of workouts in the mornings for people so that people can choose their own adventure, and they can do a body weight boot camp, they can do a yoga, they can go for a walk, whatever. Sometimes it's just opening the gym earlier. In Las Vegas, the gyms are kind of notorious for not opening until almost 8 o'clock. But for example, we had one client who had an event in Vegas. They had a ton of Europe, a lot of people from Europe. We knew that there was going to be some jet lag, so we had them open the gym at 5 a.m. so that they could go to the gym. I think something that's important is what we did is we surveyed people prior to the event to ensure that we spent our effort on what mattered to the people that were coming to the event. And the fun part about that is you can offer every modality under the sun and just let people pick what they want so that you know what they're going to enjoy when they get there. Another thing is I spoke at an event, and I helped with the organization of it. And one of the things that is some new science, it's not peer reviewed yet, it's not double blind yet, it's not medical fact yet. But in the world of ADD and ADHD, I had a software engineer who told me when I have a high protein breakfast, I don't have to take my meds. I was like, oh, that's okay. That's an interesting thing. So I went and looked it up, and approximately in the US, 25% of the population falls on the spectrum somewhere of having ADD or ADHD. So then I started digging into the science and studies of how high protein, and I swear this will all make sense, impacts people. It turned out two things. One, yes, it gives people the amino acids to support their neurotransmitters so that they can focus and pay attention. It also slows the uptake of ADD and ADHD meds, which actually prolong the efficacy of those meds. So one of the big things for me is ensuring that there's protein at breakfasts before people come into a session. This is my favorite story. So I worked with this event that I was speaking at. I asked them, I said, hey, can you make sure there's protein at breakfast? And then I talked about this. And one of the attendees went home and she said she started feeding her 13-year-old son grilled chicken every morning for breakfast, along with his normal stuff. Not the protein I would have necessarily selected. You could do yogurt, you could do all kinds of things. She told me within 6 weeks his grades went up because he was paying more attention in class.
Wow.
And that was a light bulb moment, because food and our meals impact people's ability to pay attention. And she took that home and applied it to her life, and it changed her life at home. Because she was now seeing her son become a better student because of it. The other thing we did was, so we call them the 4 M's: mindfulness, movement, meals, and meaning. Mindfulness, there's meditation and whatnot. When we talk about mindfulness, we're usually talking about what the attendees, being mindful of what you're asking of the attendee. There's a really simple thing when it comes to organizing events to understand, and that's that when you sleep, that's when you convert short-term memory to long-term memory. It's just like an inside out. It literally happens that way. And so we try to make sure we build agendas that way, so that you spend all this money on content and people spend hours in meetings for the meeting, and then you deprive people of sleep. There's that. So that's our mindfulness thing. We just talked about meals. We talked about movement. Meaning is when people connect to something bigger than themselves. We did, one of the things that's fun about humans is we all have circadian rhythms, and then they go up and down throughout the day. And after lunch, we go through this thing. The clinical term is a postprandial dip. In the afternoon, when you're sleepy after lunch, totally normal. Um, we put our corporate social responsibility programs right then, because your brain is great at tasks, but it's not good at learning necessarily. But you can still function. You can do emails, that kind of thing. If you ever want to close an important contract, book it at like 1:30 in the afternoon, have a little caffeine, and go into that meeting, and you'll own it. Um, we did a corporate social responsibility. We worked with this company called Odyssey Teams, where they build prosthetic hands for people in need in third world countries. The amount of emotions that came out of the attendees that were so touched by the fact the company invested, they said, oh, this company actually cares. And in a world today where capitalism is not seen as in the shining light it used to be, when a company actually did something meaningful and these people spent time working with their peers, the executives were in there working with individual contributors, building prosthetic hands, decorating bags, doing something that was going to make an impact in someone's life. And the company is great at facilitating. They play videos of like people receiving their prosthetics. People were crying because they were so moved by this experience that we did with people. And so what this all led to was survey results that were through the roof, because people felt that the time away from their family, their loved ones, their home, their comforts was all well spent.
Absolutely. Now, with companies, if you've done an event for them like that, usually they always want to see the success of an event, by measuring an ROI or some sort of return that they would have received. How do you help companies recognize the change that you would have helped instill within, their businesses?
Yeah, I think it comes down to outlining what success looks like for them prior to the event. If it's an internal event, sales kickoff, something of that nature, 9 times out of 10, they just want to know that people are happy and that the time was worthwhile away from their family. So we did a sales kickoff, and we had done a number of them year over year. And when we added these elements, the net promoter score went from an 8.2 on average to a 9.4 on average, with over 80% of 400 people taking the survey.
Mm.
That was all they needed. A solid point and a quarter up, let alone the tremendous amount of engagement and people saying, I don't want to go home yet.
You see,
That really moved the needle.
David, coming from where you came from and the background that you have sort of elaborated about being in some sort of close-knit family, which obviously didn't allow you to expand and be around as many people, and then going into spaces where you literally have to look after other people's well-being, that's just a bit of a jump. Were there any other interactions that you would have had with maybe different cultures or different people that would have then made this solid to you, that obviously we are one, and we've got to look after each other?
No, I think it's probably, I had a great dad. Because my dad was so old, I was kind of his redemption baby. He served in World War II. He fought in the Pacific. I have 2 half brothers who I think I met once when I was 6. But he was very nurturing because this was his opportunity to be around, because he was never around for them. So I think my desire to do this and help people feel like they're they're seen and that they belong is a byproduct of living most of my life not feeling that way.
Mm.
And I have a friend of mine, or someone who's become a friend, who has a company called the Value Graphics Company. I don't know if you've heard of it, but they surveyed over 1 million people around the world on what was important to them. Not demographics, but value graphics.
Right.
What means something to them? And the number one value globally is feeling like you belong. And I think that's why you're seeing these divisions globally, because people have figured out that you can get people to work together if they're working against someone because they feel like they belong to this group. And people have unfortunately manipulated it in a not so great way. But when a quote from him is that when people feel like they belong, they will pay up to 12% more for something.
Yep. Because
So
people like us do things like this, and that, all right, that makes sense.
So it's when you create events that make people feel seen, and I think I had something happen to me. It was like 21. We were doing a marketing offsite. I was a little rusty on bringing people together. I think I forgot to ask, do you have any special meal requirements or something of that nature?
Cool.
And we were going to lunch. It was the first time the marketing team had gotten together, and I see two people leaving, and I was like, "Hey, where are you guys going?" And they're like, "Oh, there's nothing here we can eat." And I was like, "Oh, what?" And they're like, "We can't eat anything on this line." And I can't remember what their dietary restriction was. I had never felt like a worse human being in my life,
Mm.
because there was this time that everyone was supposed to be breaking bread together and not talking about work. Maybe they are talking about work, but whatever. It was social time. And what these two people were now doing were essentially trauma bonding, because they were shut out. They couldn't be in the room with everyone else because they were hungry. So they left to go find food. And that hurt so badly. And it reminded me though how important food at an event is. And it doesn't matter if it's a peanut allergy or someone who just doesn't want to eat a crazy, saucy, fatty pasta dish.
Mm. No,
When you don't create an inclusionary meal, people will leave your event to go find the food they want.
I can only imagine. But you see, now that you are also incorporating all these wellness and additives that are not present in other events, that now creates a bigger, workload on your part and your team and everybody else involved. How do you manage to get to rally your team and even the clients to buy in to all of this? Because if you're now talking about a protein breakfast, that's more expensive than Kellogg's sugary breakfast, and then that already takes a chunk on the budget.
Yeah. Well, it's a yes and mindset. So we had a
Right.
conversation with a partner that was they're going to do a bar on a trade show floor. And I said, "Well, what are you doing for non-alcoholic?" And she goes, "Oh my God, the salespeople would kill me if we didn't have booze." I was like, "No, this isn't about removing. It's about adding."
Mm.
So your non-alcoholic drinks should be next to your alcoholic drinks, and they should be served in the same glass. I moderated a panel with a gentleman who has a non-alcoholic bar. And when he was interviewing the bartender said to him, just because you don't drink alcohol doesn't mean you deserve any less of an experience as someone who does. So none of this is about taking things away. This is about adding and or modifying. If somebody, the easiest way to deal with some food allergies, take your salad and deconstruct it. If you have a pasta dish, that's fine. Have the pasta dish, but have the pasta by itself and have all the sides on the side. And then people can choose what they want. One of the best lunches I've ever experienced was a make your own poke bowl. I just got to pick the stuff I wanted. And you know what happened at breakfast the next day? People were asking each other, hey, do you think they're going to have that poke bowl lunch again?
Because people felt like they connected using. Right. Now, if people are going to be looking for events like this and maybe to learn more a little bit about, how you can help them, what will be the best way that people can get a hold of you, David?
Yeah, they can go to olympianmeeting.com. You can look me up on LinkedIn or our podcast, which is called Return on Wellness. I'm sure you see what we're doing there.
Absolutely. It's really raw. I've seen
it is dedicated to the business case of integrating wellness into meetings and events. It's on YouTube and Spotify, but it's called Return on Wellness, aka like return on investment.
Absolutely. I'll definitely make sure that we've got those links in the show notes below, and people can sort of get started on that journey. Now, before I let you go, you did sort of allude a little bit to your own experience with mental health, which I think is now subject to, everybody else is experiencing some level or some form of it predicated on what we just experienced as a world, after the pandemic there. And it's a crucial aspect to overall wellness. You can't do well if you're not feeling well. You know what I mean? Whether you're in business, you're a parent, a dad, or whatever it is. Now, can you just let us know how, by you addressing your own mental health challenge, your perspective on wellness actually started changing within the workplace? Because some people might not understand just because they haven't had it right in front of them.
Yeah. It was really coming to terms with controlling what you can control and understanding that you can't be all things to all people all the time. I just had a guest on the show who she said, think of your life and your priorities as pots on a stove. You can't have them all on high all the time because they're going to boil over or burn out. So you have to, and sometimes you have to take something and put it on a back burner and let it, you don't have to turn it off, but you can let it simmer. I had someone else talk about wheels on a skateboard. Sometimes one of the wheels on a skateboard gets a little flat, and so you got to sand it out and rotate it. We tend to feel like we have to be everything to everyone all the time. And I think for me, the pandemic gave me an opportunity to slow down. I think both with work and personally, I just got very much in my own head and I didn't know how to manage it during that time because I wasn't going anywhere. The distractions were gone.
Yeah.
So what that forced me to do was pay attention and learn how to be with myself instead of chasing things and work and flights and whatnot and not having to be present with myself. It's funny. We were talking with someone and they wanted to like offer a mindfulness session that was like 60 minutes long. And we had to say to him, that's a really long time for people who have never done that before. To like sit with just their thoughts for a full hour.
That's torture.
Like, maybe we should do like a 10-minute and then a 15-minute and then a 25-minute. And people can choose beginner, medium, or advanced. Because being with your own thoughts is tough. And that's what I had to come to terms with my own mental health, was just being present, being in my own body, getting out of my head, and realizing that I couldn't lift my weights out of my way of being comfortable with my own mind.
Absolutely. I mean, even people in solitary confinement are sometimes taken out for a bit of sunlight, you know. So you can only imagine, you know, that's. But you know, we might have listeners that are also maybe business owners or event sort of managers who might now be considering incorporating wellness into their own events and sort of workplaces. Could you give us maybe a couple of practical steps that you'd recommend for them to actually get started? Because this might just be very overwhelming for other people that have not quite had the opportunity to have the experiences that you've had.
Yeah, well, one thing I will say is, if you have a corporate wellness program, your corporate events should integrate that wellness into them. That's a big thing for us, is we're trying to close the gap between corporate wellness and corporate events, because there seems to be a huge rift. People spend billions annually on corporate wellness programs, and then when they plan a corporate gathering, it all goes out the window. I would say if you want to get started, the Global Wellness Institute is a great start. But start with the why. Don't just do something because it's trendy or it's on TikTok or whatever. Start with the why. Because if you start with your why, it gives you intention. Why do you want to do wellness? What are you looking to solve? It's kind of like a lot of people do dry January. And I saw this video that said, if you're going to do dry January, don't stay home. Go out. Disassociate being in social situations and having to drink. Because otherwise, dry January will lead to effed up February, and then you're not going to find any balance. Not drinking shouldn't be a punishment, especially if you're doing it for your health. You need to learn how to do that and still be social. So start with your why. What's compelling you to want to do wellness? Then do your research. Lululemon did a study of 16,000 people on 5 continents. 2/3 of them are conflicted because when you scroll through TikTok, someone said seed oils are bad. The next one says seed oils are fine. The next one says dairy's bad. The next one says you should drink almond milk. The next one says almond milk is bad. Like, look for people that promote practice over product. So you'll notice I talked about protein for breakfast. I didn't say so-and-so brand protein for breakfast. I just said protein. We're not here to shill product. I had someone who talked to me about wanting to do a revenue share thing with one of those multi-level, and I was like, I can't do it. Do I have products I like? Yes. And if people ask me what I use, I will tell them. But that's not ever what I want to promote. I want to promote the practice over the product that are from trusted sources, so that people understand that there's real science behind this. because it's working towards the outcome. It's just like medicine, right? Like, are you treating the symptoms or are you treating the root cause? This wellness stuff is about treating the root cause so that your meetings and events are more effective. And that's it.
Absolutely. Now, David, obviously you've pioneered this whole endeavor, and you've sort of become the thought leader in this space. What's next? What can we expect now that you've taken us into your world and we're exploring new horizons here?
Yeah, there's the shift is happening. Non-alcoholic beverages are on the rise. I spoke to this company that supposedly is working on basically a Brita filter for alcoholic drinks. So you can take a $200 bottle of wine that tastes amazing, pour it through this filter, and it'll be non-alcoholic on the other side.
Wow.
There's companies.
Now I can have whiskey for breakfast. And now I can have whiskey for breakfast and be
right. There's hospitality brands who are doubling down on this and are creating menus that are focused so that meeting planners don't have to try to figure this stuff out on their own. They're offering wellness menus so that the heavy lifting has already been done for them. And one of the things we did last year is we launched our wellness awards, which were focused. We work with a group called Fit for Events, and what they were acknowledging like the best indoor meeting space, best outdoor meeting space, things of that nature. So we're trying to do what we can to help provide planners with resources so that they know where to go find meeting spaces with natural light, places that are outdoors, things of that nature. Best banquets menu, best non-alcoholic beverages, that kind of stuff, so that it makes it easier for the planners who are curious about this, so that they can start somewhere.
Absolutely.
But it's happening and it's shifting and people are understanding.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for obviously spearheading this journey. I can only see green lights going towards this, because it is quite clear that integrating wellness into our professional lives isn't just beneficial, it's actually essential. With a lot of people working from home now, you want to be bringing people together, and so many people have sort of changed the way they are and the way they do things. So you want to be as inclusive and also as mindful, like you were mentioning earlier on. So your journey from traditional event planning to wellness advocate actually offers these valuable lessons in embracing change, prioritizing well-being, and aligning everybody's careers with their passions. Now, I can't thank you enough, David, for the time that we spent on the call today. I mean, your life story and your experience and everything else that comes along with it has just shed a bit of light into what is possible with what we have and the stage of life that we are. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Fun fact, in that Lululemon story, I want to share this with you. People that spent time with others in nature or outdoors saw an 18% uptick in their well-being. So your next meeting, if you can have it outside or going for a walk, do it.
I think absolutely. I mean, if you're in and around nature, like you said, you have all your receptors on, so you're taking in all the information, and especially whatever information that is coming from the other end. Now, you've given me an idea. I'll probably just have to start doing my Zooms on top of Uluru, just so that
don't go up there unless you're allowed to be up there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And for those that are watching right now, thank you so much for tuning into the Online Prosperity Show. If this episode resonated with you, I would also encourage you to consider incorporating wellness into your daily routine and also your workplace. And if you're not the person in charge of that, why don't you share this episode with the person in charge of wellness and events in your workplace or in your environment? And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show for more inspiring content like this. I encourage you also to join us on the next episode where we're going to be exploring ideas to enhance your happiness and well-being, and we're going to be providing practical tips to lead you to more fulfilling lives. Until next time, bye for now.